Breakthrough Real Estate Investing Podcast, episode 85.
Hello and welcome to the Breakthrough Real Estate Investing Podcast. We put this show together to inspire you and help you break through to the life that you want to live through the power of real estate investing. My name is Rob Brake. Here with me again is Sandy McKay. What's up, Sandy?
Hello. Hey. What's up? Not too much. Just excited to do this again. Great guests lined up here waiting in the background here. And yeah, lots of good stuff to get through. So I'm excited.
Me too. I just want to encourage everybody before, or just put the show on pause, I guess, and go over to breakthroughreipodcast.ca and listen to all of the shows that came before this one. So don't listen to this one right now until you've heard all the rest, and then come back and listen to this one. We've got 84 episodes that you can find all of them there. And the ones that are on iTunes, there's only about 50 of them there. So if you want to listen to the earlier ones, you got to go to the website, breakthroughreipodcast.ca.
And yeah, go over there, grab our free report there, the ultimate strategy for building wealth through real estate. And you can also get on our list there to get all of our updates on what we're up to, events, all that sort of stuff, and get notified of every episode that comes out so you don't have to remind yourself every time. So get on that list, get a bunch more stuff from us, and hopefully learn something from that report.
Yeah, come out to our events too. Meet up with us and see what's going on. I know Sandy runs events, once a month?
Once a month, yeah, around once a month. A couple of great ones coming up. If someone's listening to this, when are we listening to this? Yeah, we're doing one in the end of April. If someone's listening to this as it's just coming out, it's going to be a good one around raising money and joint venture partners. So always something new every month, but that'll be the next one coming up after this episode. So it's going to be a good one. People are
perfect
excited about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I usually do 1 or 2 property tours a month. So yeah, if you just get on the tour list, you will be able to know when those are. So, okay. Also, if you go to the website, you can click on each guest that we have. So today we have Jared Henderson, and if you want to see his information, how to get in contact with him, just click on the show notes for that episode in the website, and you'll be able to see his phone number, all that stuff, and give him a call and talk. So that being said, one last thing before we get to the interview is if you go over to iTunes, you can leave us a rating and review. And right now we've got 215 ratings. We've just got one since the last time I read them. So I'll read that one now. And it's actually a 4-star. I think it's because of the quality of our sound. And I would tend to agree with this because although I wasn't there, I did listen to your episode with Gary, which was fantastic. And he sounded like his audio was flawless, like sounded like he was in a studio. And ours is not so great. Like I know right now you could probably hear noises coming from the house here, and you're a little echoey and stuff like that. So I don't know, we should take a little bit of time and focus on that. But so this person says, great content, okay sound quality. And this is by MacGyver C. And he says, Sandy, Rob, please listen to how smooth Gary sounded in your most recent podcast and compare it to how you sound. Echoes everywhere. Ask Gary how he does it. That being said, the content on here is really amazing. Great interviews and great info. I've listened back to episode 65 and will keep working my way back. Keep up the great work, and I loved the Belize episode. There you go. A little bit of a contrast to the last one. So
cool. Perfect. Well, 5 years in, we're kind of still running off kind of what we were always running off. It's probably due for an upgrade, right? All these people come out with new shows, and they've got upgraded tech gear and all that. So
yeah, I feel like mine should sound better. I'm running it through a soundboard and everything here, but I don't really know how to use it. So I just kind of plugged it in, and it works. It gets the audio into the recorder. So that was the goal. I haven't really worked on making it sound better. I don't know. Sandy here.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I imagine mine's not the best, but we will work on that really soon.
I thought you bought a microphone.
I did, and then I don't know. Long story. We got something new going, I promise.
Okay. Okay. Anyways, enough about that. Today we are here to talk to Jared Henderson. So welcome, Jared. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, Jared, I'll just read through a quick little bio, and you can add to it if you want. Jared was born and raised in Montreal. I started investing in Niagara Falls in 2012, and I purchased 2 condos, and since then has grown his portfolio in around Niagara Falls, St Catharines region, and then out into Peterborough as well. And kind of cool, he's doing that from still living in Montreal, correct?
That's right.
Cool. Yeah, so I think we're gonna focus on that quite a bit today. It's interesting because you're quite far away from your investment properties, so we'll dig a little bit deeper into how you do all that, how you manage it from afar, I guess.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
so thanks for being here. And we are going to talk about your opinion on the state of the Golden Horseshoe market, which is in the Toronto area and all the way down around the lake and back up to my area here in Oshawa. And how you generate cash flow as the area becomes more challenging. So thanks, man. Thanks for being here.
I love it, Rob. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So let's just dive right in with how you got started in real estate investing. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So about 7 years ago, I was in internet advertising for myself, and I had a strong earnings year, and I wanted to invest the savings, but I really didn't know exactly where to start. I wanted to invest in real estate, but like anyone, you don't know what you don't know, and I didn't have a network of people who were doing it. But I met a friend of mine who told me about an opportunity to invest in a condo project where an apartment building was being converted into a condominium building, and they were looking for investors. And this was the type of investment that made sense to me because it involves buying the real estate, but having someone else manage the property. And I thought it was a good idea to break into the market that way. And so I bought 2 condos in Niagara Falls in 2012, and that was my first real estate investment.
Okay, and that was that was just really a passive investment almost. You didn't really get to go and walk around in the places, that kind of thing, right? Like,
correct.
Very much hands off.
Very much hands off. Basically, receive rent every month, see the property statement of income versus expenses, and just wait for it to appreciate, pay down the mortgage, and sort of a buy and hold investment. Yeah. So it definitely was hands off. That's for sure.
So was there sort of an aha moment for you where you said real estate is something I'm going to look into, or was it more there was more of that moment, say, after you started investing?
I always wanted to get into it. Basically, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 2005. I love the book, but I never really took action until later on. I knew that real estate was, I never say a risk-free, but a very stable way of growing wealth between the debt pay down, appreciation, and cash flow. It sounded like something that made sense, where you could start small and then within a few years grow something substantial if you did it responsibly. And I really like that idea versus, I don't know, other hands-on methods of starting my own, right now, Amazon business or another type of active business, because I'm fairly busy with what I do as a day job. So it's sort of a way of passively investing in an area where I believe there's going to be substantial growth without having to, for example, manage the properties myself. And you can get into that as well.
Mm-hmm. What do you do for a day job?
So I'm a sheet metal salesman. We have a family business called ISE Metal, and I basically sell sheet metal to manufacturers. We laser cut, bend, weld, plate metal, and sell them to other manufacturers who assemble them into their final product and sell them to consumers. So we're B2B, and my job is to find these clients, meet with them, and get them buying from ISE.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Is that just local or just at?
Well, the Sherbrooke's based out of the business is based out of Sherbrooke, Quebec, and I live in Montreal. I'm back and forth all the time. I focus on, in particular, a 5-hour radius from the plant. After that, the transportation costs of the metal becomes prohibitive, and so there is sort of a radius or limits to the regions in which I can sell.
Okay, tune into Jared's Sheet Metal podcast for more info on that. I don't know.
Absolutely. I'll start one later on.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for sharing that with us anyway. So I guess I'm going to switch these two questions around here because I think they're in the wrong order of what I wrote them. But how much learning did you do before you took action then and bought the first property? What was that process like?
Yeah, so my learning, as I mentioned before, was basically only theoretical. I, along with Rich Dad Poor Dad, I read a few other books. I like the idea. Never really took action until I had the opportunity there. I was never actively looking for it. I never knew of, for example, Rockstar Real Estate or these networks that supported newbie investors and sort of holding their hands along the process of purchasing their first home. So all my education was based on the books that I had read, but I never really did specific research on cities, trends, population growth, infrastructure development, and all the factors that contribute to a strong investment opportunity.
So what did you do then?
I guess I met Patrick. he was the friend of the friend who had invested in this condominium type investment. And I met with the guy who was responsible for selling units for the project and took action then. And that was my first step. And then a few years later, after I had seen some appreciation in the Niagara market, I started looking to Hamilton and other markets to really understand what was happening, why were prices going up, and sort of really delved into the fundamentals that I didn't understand before.
Okay, so you got started in the Ontario market, even though you live in Montreal, I guess through that friend. But all of your investing is not with that partner, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So why did you decide to stay here then, as opposed to doing something more local in Montreal?
Yeah, I do believe in the long-term fundamentals in the GTA, with the lake to the south, the greenbelt to the north. There are limited availabilities to build, and in particular, as you can see in the trend, there's less and less single-family homes being built due to high land and construction costs. I really like the strategy aspect of it. That's what really gets me going. And so I rent here in Montreal because I can't justify buying a place when I believe long-term the appreciation will be in the markets that I'm investing in. So if I can rent here and invest in neighborhoods that I believe will appreciate, that to me is the optimal strategy.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what is this? What is the strategy? What type of properties do you invest in?
Yeah, so I'm partial to raised bungalows for a number of reasons. Typically, they're affordable. As I mentioned, I like detached homes. They appreciate more than semis or condos on average, as they're more scarce. The raised aspect is important to me because I'm always looking to either add bedrooms or a full second suite in the basement. And I want as much light in there as possible so that there's a decent quality of living in the basement. So there's a bonus if there's already a lot of windows, so I don't have to install them, as it's a cash expense. And I'd say the same thing goes for a side entrance that leads to the basement. So any cost that I can save post-purchase is money in my bank.
Okay, and then what do you do with these properties?
In Peterborough, I'm doing student rentals. So typically there's a recreational room in the basement that's between 10 and 20 feet. 10 feet by 20 feet. and I'll turn that into another couple bedrooms. So the goal is to purchase a property that has 3+ bedrooms and end up with a property that has 6 bedrooms after throwing up drywall. If a second bathroom is needed in the basement, I'll create one there, as well as any other modifications to the property. And in St. Catharines, I'm doing second suites where I'll basically do an entire unit in the basement to collect a second rent for the property. I'm a big believer in getting 2 rents versus 1. As cash flow becomes more and more challenging, I'm not a fan of buying single family homes and renting them out as is, just because I need to see that cash flow as expenses come up. I want to maximize the amount of rent, and I do that by creating a second unit or additional bedrooms. Yeah.
Okay, and so your properties that you have in St. Catharines are 2 units?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then in the other market, which you said is Peterborough, you're investing in student rentals there.
Correct. And there's what I particularly like about Peterborough. There's an exit strategy when I'm in a student rental. For example, if there's going to be appreciation down the line where we see more and more second suites being refinanced, we'll start seeing comps and understanding how the market develops. What I like about a student rental is I have the ability to turn that into either a second suite or back to a single family home and sell it down the line if the market appreciates, and it's a reasonable exit strategy. Yeah. So I like having multiple options. I don't like being pegged into one corner where all I can do is one thing, and if it doesn't work, I need to sell. I don't like that strategy. I enjoy being flexible and having options.
It's a good one too, because obviously your capital expense up front is a lot less than adding a second suite. Definitely.
So the properties that I've purchased in Peterborough typically require about $10,000 to $20,000, and the second suites in St. Catharines would require between 50 and 70, depending on the property. It all depends on what's been done in the basement and the changes that need to be made based on the city's requirements. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
So what kind of challenges have you faced then going through? You've done a couple different strategies. You're pretty far away from some of your properties. What kind of challenges does all that create?
Yeah. So challenges. Well, from the beginning, when I bought those 2 condos, I unfortunately inherited tenants. So those types of problems come up as rookie mistakes, where you inherit a tenant and unfortunately can't get them out because they're allowed to stay and they're paying under market rent. That I've learned from. Now, the irony is, in the beginning when I first started investing, my biggest fear was not finding a renter and not getting rent collected because I'm going to buy this thing and how am I going to pay for it? Right now, that's about the furthest thing from my fear, and I would require buying anything to be I would require vacant possession when buying anything as an investment these days. Challenges with respect to property management. Definitely nothing is perfect. You have to start out somewhere, and what I would say, and what I give advice to beginning investors, is start networking with people who are investing in your neighborhoods and look for references for strong property managers and contractors to help you out and support you throughout the process. We're all here to support each other and help each other out. And so by networking and talking with people who have had positive and negative experiences with their team, it makes you a better investor, and there's no need to make certain mistakes that could be avoided through networking with like-minded investors.
All right, so I don't want to glaze over it, so let's go back to the challenge. So your challenge was the tenants were in there, right? You inherited them.
Yeah.
Okay, so we skipped the how did you overcome it part. What happened?
Overcoming it. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
we need to figure out how you got around or through your
yeah, of
challenge, man.
course. That's how you grow. So I didn't mention this is a bit of a funny story. Depends on your perspective of funny, but one of the tenants that I inherited was a hoarder,
Okay.
and I couldn't get her out. Of course, uh, I shouldn't be laughing. I out of
It's funny in retrospect. That's all.
yeah out of health concern, of course, I got the fire department in there, and although she had junk stacked up floor to ceiling, they couldn't do anything because she had quote unquote means to egress. So she had enough space in between her piles of junk to exit the front door. And unfortunately, the fire department did not consider it a fire hazard. After phone calls with the property management company, I finally got a hold of her son. And so, unfortunately, she wasn't mentally healthy. And I was able to at least deal with someone who has her best interest at heart. And he said, look, Jared, I know it's a matter of time. I need her to move close to me. He was living in St Catharines at the time. So I negotiated something with him where we're able to get her to move out of the apartment. There was a bit of an incentive there with respect to it was 4 or 5 months rent. And we got it all out, and paying to get all her stuff out as well was a significant cost. A lot of bins were in that parking lot to get rid of everything she had. So yes, it was overcome. It took time, and look, in the end, it's worth it. I bought that place for $155,000, and I sold it last year once renovated for about $257,000. No, not six. Well, why would I begin with that? $257,000. So look, I made money in the end. It was something that I wasn't interested in holding in terms of long term because I wouldn't experience decent cash flow after the refinancing and renovations. I just chose to get out of it and invest in single family homes. So long story short, I got a hold of the decision maker, negotiated a mutually beneficial deal, and executed it.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because that is difficult, right? Like, so now you're strictly against taking anything with tenants in, or is there like a caveat to that rule?
No, not necessarily. If they're paying market rent, if it's in a good neighborhood, then I'm not really fearful of inheritant tenants as much. It's just the ones that I did inherit were of lesser quality. We're not tenants that I would buy a property with. That's all. Yeah, so you live and learn, and it was my first experience. And look, in the end, as you know, most investors learn by losing money, and I didn't lose money. I just required a lot of patience. Let's just say, a lot of patience, a lot of phone calls, and negotiating. But in the end, it worked out. So it was an experience, that's for sure.
What about other challenges? You got any others?
Yeah, well, I invested in a couple of single family homes in Hamilton after Niagara Falls, and they weren't in the greatest neighborhood. They were in downtown, not the greatest tenant profile. And although they did appreciate, as Hamilton is a strong area to invest in, I had issues with tenants, and I had to evict one family, and I didn't have a renewal on the other. So I basically just decided from then and there that I would take the money from the sale and invest in stronger neighborhoods, in sort of what you'd say A-class or A-minus neighborhoods where you can just attract a better tenant profile and not deal with the vacancy that I needed to suffer from. Because a lot of real estate agents will tell you about cash flow, and you have to make sure that their estimate, it's based on the neighborhood you're investing in. For example, if you're investing in a C-class neighborhood and you've got a projected cash flow statement, it better include a higher amount of vacancy, because you're you're going to deal with certain problems that you won't in other neighborhoods. And so I learned my lesson quickly there and have adjusted, especially investing from a distance. It makes most sense to invest in stronger neighborhoods, in the A minus, B plus type neighborhoods where you're not going to deal with vacancy, non-payment of rent and whatnot. I mean, problems are always going to come up in any neighborhood. It's fine, but you want to mitigate the losses and give yourself the best chance of succeeding.
Mm-hmm. You know what I would say typically now, so like the type of properties you said you invest in is raised bungalows.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would say typically you're probably not going to find those in the areas where you might have trouble. I know I'm generalizing a little bit, but the raised bungalows are typically in a family area that's, you know, a little further away from downtown, let's say, that kind of thing. So probably just with that might be part of the decision on why you like that style of house as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It also got me out of single family into, I think in general, as you know, the bungalows are easily converted to, more easily converted to a second unit than a standard two-story house. In general, not always, but I just find the layout conducive to modifications.
Jared, what sort of vacancies are you running your numbers with? Just out of curiosity, I think a lot of listeners, a lot of realtors, I guess, would probably not even put that in their numbers when they're presenting properties and listings. So, what kind of numbers do you usually use, and how do you go about changing them in when looking at different areas and that sort of thing?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I typically use 5% in my neighborhoods. My current neighborhoods, there is very low vacancy, and I do use 5%. However, I perhaps should use something like maybe 7 or 8%, just as a buffer. You know, as investors, if you're like me, if you're paying someone to manage the property, there's a lease up fee, so there's 1 month's rent right there, and anytime you have that turnover, you're going to have to pay that continuously. So it does make sense to be conservative on the side of vacancy, perhaps go up to something like 10%, so that you're covered. Like I said, a lot of, let's just say, not all, but many realtors who will give you an Excel and a Proforma, a breakdown of the numbers, will show you I don't know, a 3% vacancy, but the reality is when there's a problem, that 3% goes up to something like 20% when your costs don't reflect that vacancy at all. So it's much better to be conservative and expect turnover and make sure the property cash flows healthily before buying that property.
And maintenance too. I think a lot of people miss the maintenance and vacancy allowances in their numbers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the three, I forget the third one. So it'd be maintenance, vacancy, and property management as well. I need to put in property management, but I find that many of the pro formas that some realtors dish out will not have that property management fee in it, even if the investor intends to use property management. So yeah.
Well, it's tough, and it's a little bit of a lesson. Like, I'll guide people along, but I generally won't give a pro forma unless somebody specifically asks me for one, because I like people to do that for themselves. And of course, because I think, and some people don't maybe know how to do it, but I have a good spreadsheet that I use, and I'll share it. But I like people to put in their own numbers, the ones that they feel comfortable with, right? And that way, and then they can send it back to me and ask me my opinion. But you're absolutely right. A lot of times the property management's left out, and most of the time that's because it may or may not be a cost that somebody is incurring, right? It's good to have it in there just to
it's an expense one way or the other, though, right, Rob? If I'm not paying someone to manage my properties, I've got to manage it myself. Exactly. I know I live 7 hours away from my place, but I need to get paid for my time. or I need to be compensated in some form of it. So it wouldn't be fair to say that property management is free if I'm managing my own property. It's not free because my time isn't free.
No, you're absolutely right about that. But I think that that's something that, I mean, a lot of people, especially when they're new, they'll give their time to a project and not have a monetary value put on that.
Yes.
You know, especially people that are doing big renos and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, look, if I'm doing a 2-unit conversion, let's say, and I'm putting the numbers down, well, I'm not, and I'm the property expert partner, let's say, okay, well, there's not the value for me is an equity in the property, so there's not going to be any account of a monetary value for what I'm bringing.
Right.
To
the sweat equity.
Yeah, you know, there's all different things, and that's why, again, so that was strictly my point. Is like everyone's going to fill out their performance differently, and and I encourage people to get comfortable with a spreadsheet, right, so that they can punch the numbers in and quickly see what they're looking at.
Yes. No, I think that's wise because they'll learn. One thing I would suggest is for investors if new investors to come up with their pro forma and show it to an experienced investor, and we could likely poke holes in it to show them some spots that they haven't considered that will impact their cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's especially important as property prices continue to rise, as mortgage rates are much higher now than they were last year, and there's the stress test and lending and borrowing becomes much more challenging. That's my point as well, where it's good to believe in your cash flow projection, but show it to someone else who's in it, who's in the same game and who has a few properties, and ask them what they think. It's just great to learn, and it's something that people should shy from because they're going to experience it one way or the other. It's just the reality of investing.
Well, you know what? Like, you're part of a real estate group, I'm sure, and I know just from being around you that we have quite a community of investors that we all talk to who are investing in that Peterborough market. Yeah. But no matter where you are, one of Sandy and I's, you know, long time pieces of advice, I guess, is to join a real estate club. And the people that you meet there, they're not going to say, "Hey, pal, like, I don't have time to look at this for you." You know, everybody is there to share and help each other grow. So it's, yeah.
And you should, and those people should, because they've been there before where they didn't have anything and they wanted to buy one property and start out. And absolutely, and I'll always give my time for people who are looking to learn and get into the market. Yeah,
so good advice. Thanks, Jared.
Any other points on managing properties from a distance then? Or do we kind of covered a bit of that already, but any other big points on that?
Managing from a distance means I manage property managers. They're not all perfect. When problems do come up, you need to handle them immediately and responsibly. And just because things aren't perfect with one property manager doesn't mean you switch up and look for someone else right away. You have to understand that property management is definitely not an easy business. The point is to communicate your goals as an investor and your expectations. Like any other business, and if they fail to meet them, then it makes sense to move on and find someone new. But I found that keeping close ties with your property managers and understanding what's going on, where you are, and where you're going is very healthy. So you just have to keep that line of communication open. I started investing in real estate because I believe in its long-term value. But I never wanted to manage my properties because I believe that I can make more money by acquiring properties and forming joint venture strategic partnerships with people to acquire more properties than managing my properties.
Real quick then, before we let it go, you did say that you have some challenges with property management. Do you want to talk about maybe some of them?
Oh, sure. Well, certain houses, for example, could stay vacant for not the whole house, but one unit, or either one unit or a couple of bedrooms could be vacant for a month or two. And I've got to communicate a sense of urgency to the property manager they might not want to fill it as fast as I do. And I understand that you want it to be filled with a quality tenant. That's number one, because there are bigger problems when you fill it with a poor quality one. But basically, just to communicate what's going on with each property, their plan on having rents maximized, having happy tenants, and you're just basically understanding your expectations as far as filling up vacancy. Vacancy has been one thing that I've had an issue with certain property managers with respect to. I want it eliminated. I want my units always to be full. And of course, I know that's not 100% realistic, but the truth is they don't lose as much money as I do when the unit is vacant. And I'm well aware of the rental demand in the areas that I'm investing in. Okay. So it's about bridging the gap between their reason or excuse of why something is vacant versus what the numbers are telling me and what other investors are experiencing in their own properties, regardless of whether they manage them or not.
Right.
And getting max rent. As you know, Rob, in Peterborough, I believe there are different property managers that get different rents for the same bedroom. Why is that? You have to ask yourself these questions, and then as you do that and understand the value that they're giving, you'll get the correct answer in the end. It's something you need to keep on top of.
Yeah, and I think your main point there is just to make sure that they have the time and the ability to give the focus that you need to your property, right?
Yeah.
You don't want them to be too busy that your vacancy becomes lower on their priority list.
Correct.
So, okay. Yeah. And I would tend to agree with you. I mean, just because I know personally of what you're speaking, that was a property management issue.
Correct.
Right. So you have to identify it, I think, and you did, and move on, take the proper steps. It's the same as when we run into, with Tom, just on the last episode, Sandy, we were talking about the renos not going the way that we want with the contractors and that kind of thing. So at a certain point, you just have to realize that maybe things aren't going the way that they're supposed to, and be able to take the appropriate action when and if that is needed. All right. It's tough. You ever fired a property management company, Sandy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Only once, I think.
Was it that? So why?
Because we started our own.
So not because there was a big issue with them or anything.
No, but part of the reason we started our own was because there was issues, right? It's a challenging business. Having gotten a lot more involved in it lately than I have been in the past, it's definitely a challenging business. It's a lot of people. Sometimes, tenants are difficult sometimes, for sure, and then as long as your communication is good, I think you can manage the investor pretty well and their needs and expectations and everything. As long as the communication's there, I think it's usually can go pretty well. But if the communication breaks down and all of a sudden, an investor is getting upset for whatever reason, it can turn into, getting a lot of hate kind of come at you from every direction, because tenants are upset with things, and then investors upset with different things, and you're kind of just everyone's excuse, I guess, for having issues with the property. But it's a good business if you run it well and have good communication. I think is really a big key component of it.
Yeah, I got to give
go ahead.
I was just going to give a shout out to the good property managers, because it is tough. Like
yes,
a couple of years ago, I decided to start a property management company as well, and it didn't last too long. It was very, very time consuming, right? So I didn't probably start it in the right way. I was more involved in it than I probably should have been if one is going to start a property management company. But had about maybe 5 or 6 properties under management, and just that in itself spread me way too thin. So I know how time consuming and tough that can be.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say to Sandy, it's funny, my realtor in the Niagara region, Erica Spencer, she started up a property management company based on the same reasons you did, where she wasn't happy with the way her properties were being managed. And she decided to take the bull by the horns and do it herself. So, yeah, and like you said, Rob, it's not easy. And there's only so many things you can do and focus on to be productive. And if you can outsource it like I do, you just do it and do it to the best of your abilities to make it all work.
Mm-hmm. Sandy, do you manage other people's properties or just your own? You
No,
manage properties and you've never talked about having a property management company?
we were kind of keeping it low key for a while because it was I don't know, we were doing a lot of our own stuff and debating how big we wanted to make it.
Right.
Because it is one thing to manage your own stuff and a whole totally different ballgame to manage other people's properties.
Yeah, true enough.
Yeah, and
Let me guess, Sandy, you'd much rather focus your energy on investors buying properties in Hamilton than on 10 more property management clients in your business. Is that a stab in the dark, or is that?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I think as we've built it up now, we've started to see that it benefits everything. They're all connected, right? So they're complementary businesses, right? If we can pick up some more investors that own properties already, well, when they go to perhaps buy their next one, they might look at that and think they're two separate companies, but they're connected, right? With the same ownership group. And
well, it's a positive feature for your investors because just like myself or other investors, if we can deal with an agent who understands real estate investing and they can support us at post-purchase, there's a lot of value in that. So I commend you. That's
exactly, yeah.
That's when it's going to help you expand your business. That's for sure.
Yeah. Maybe one day you'll tell us about
Yeah.
You can everyone, if any listeners are out there and they have properties in the Hamilton area, they can reach out to me and we can discuss it. It's we are a bit selective on who we work with. We want to avoid making this a company that gets us to too many issues there. But we're pretty leveraged with it now, so it's running really well actually. So that's why we've started to kind of pump it up a bit more and get the word out there. And we do take on only investors and people, property owners who we know are going to be a good fit with our company, and not just everybody. I think a lot of issues, particularly Hamilton, because it's got a whole mix of neighborhoods and you know, there's some great areas and there's some challenging ones. A really, really tough property, we'll just
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Because it's not worth our time at the end of the day sometimes. But it's a really, really challenging business. It can be run really well, but it's definitely, like you said, I got a soft spot now for good property managers because it is a fun, rewarding business, but it's got some big challenges for sure.
Okay. Well, anyone wants to hear about that, reach out to Sandy. It's not the Sandy show though, Sandy. We're going to talk to Jared. First, I give him back for not talking about it.
I love learning about other people's experiences all the time.
Yeah. I just got to jab him either way, no matter what he does.
Yeah.
So, Jared, what does your portfolio look like now? How did you get from those first couple and to where you are?
Yeah, so after buying the condos in Niagara Falls, I was able to refinance both of those properties in 2016. And that's when I started educating myself about the growth of the Hamilton market. And I bought 2 single-family homes there. Like I said, based on my experience, I sold them a year later just because of the tenant issues. And since then, I've redeployed that capital to St Catharines and Peterborough. So I'm focusing all my energy on St Catharines and Peterborough as my 2 hubs of growth. And that's where I am.
Nice. Okay. So how do you get financing for all these places?
Scotiabank was very good to me for the first 5 properties, and then it became challenging after that. So I'm actively looking for joint venture partners who are interested in the Golden Horseshoe. I've educated many people in Montreal who always wanted to get into real estate investing, but never took the first few steps. And I explained, my experience, what I've done, and how I can assist in getting a deal, purchasing it, and managing it. And so I'm looking for investors who can qualify on the financing end and put up the capital for these homes.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's a good strategy, Jared.
absolutely. So yeah, I have my goal for 2019 is 3 joint ventures. I have 1 already, looking for 2 more. As you know, for anyone who wants to contact me, just check out the show notes, my email and numbers there. So don't hesitate.
Absolutely, yeah. I encourage people to reach out to you. You certainly know your economics and your market, and you know how to run this thing. So I think you'd be a great partner for people. What else you got on tap moving forward? Like, what motivates you, and how do you get inspired to keep going with all this stuff?
Yeah, I really enjoy being around other like-minded investors and entrepreneurs in general, and seeing what they've done to grow their business. I simply don't have the excuse to not do that for myself. Once you're part of these networks and you see the great things that people are doing, their strategies, I really love learning about what other people are doing as the market changes year over year. Real estate's definitely not a get-rich-quick scheme, but I find that time goes by faster and faster as I get older. So, the funny thing is, one thing that kept me back from investing so much over the years is listening to people, how the crash is coming, how everything's overpriced, all the naysayers. But despite those fears, you basically have to make the decision for yourself that you fear not making the move. You fear not taking action, because that's far worse than expecting the crash or something bad to happen. Yeah. But in terms of getting me motivated, what I really love is networking with like-minded investors and seeing what they're doing, and just setting the bar higher and higher for myself. It can be a lonely sport at times, where if you're the only one in it and investing in your own properties and dealing with your own problems, then it's easy to dwell and say, well, what am I really doing? But it becomes much more rewarding when you're sharing your experience with other investors and you grow from there. Yeah. I mean,
Beautiful.
You have to sort of pick a side. I find real estate investors buy all the time, and the ones who are waiting for the crash, they're never going to buy even when there is a crash, because the credit supply is going to shrink and they won't even be able to borrow. So you really sort of have to pick a side and take action.
You know what, you're absolutely right, Jared. I mean, there's always something to wait for. It doesn't matter when. If there's a crash, they go, well, it's going to keep dropping. I can't buy now. It's going to keep dropping.
Yeah.
If it's on its way up. Well, it's on its way up. Prices are too expensive. It's just, no matter what, you can find an excuse to not go. You can always do that. And like you said, I think I love that bit of advice that you just gave, and that was to be afraid of not taking that move. What happens if you don't do it? That's something that people should be more concerned with.
Most people don't see things that way, but we need to start thinking that way, because that's actually the reality, because it just leads to regret. It's always fun to, I should have bought Bitcoin a few years ago. I mean, it's, I guess what I'm trying to say is you have to get to the point where you see other action takers and how they've benefited, and stop trying to project things out in a way that can be an unknown. If you take the long term, if you take the long view when it comes to real estate investing, you will be fine. But it does begin by taking action and not just showing up to a seminar and doing nothing with it.
You cannot, and correct me if I'm wrong, you cannot buy a property at this point in time 5 years ago. Now, it's just, as far as I know, you just can't do it.
No.
So the only time you can do it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sandy, do you know how to buy a property 5 years ago? Right now?
I haven't come up with that answer yet, but that'd be something.
If he could, Rob, if he could,
idea.
If he could, he'd sell everything he owns and borrow everything he could.
Right.
True.
If he could, and so would I.
But it's so funny. I truly believe that we'll all be saying that in 5 years from now too.
100%.
Yeah. Everyone should be buying as much property as they can right now because
now you're getting it.
Yeah, it's only going to continue to be. It's going to continue to tighten, and in 5 years, we'll still think it's a great investment, and we'll still be buying properties in 5 years. But you should do what you could do now, right?
Exactly. Well, one thing also I think that shifts people's mindset. Is that the right way of putting it? Or sorry, their perspective. It's their perspective on money. We were talking about this before the podcast, Rob, where it even happens with investors now who bought for $50K, $100K below the current market a year or two ago. And so they say, well, prices are so high right now, I can't justify or it doesn't make sense. But the truth is that, that line of logic doesn't really work because you're saying that prices are high now, but they're not going to get any higher. And that doesn't resonate with me because who are they to decide that the market has hit its cap?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's actually saying that.
We don't know. So why are they saying it now? Why and it's yeah, you know where I'm going.
I totally understand your mentality. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But ask that same person that says prices are too high if they're going to be higher in 5 years. The answer will always be yes. And I would imagine they would be willing to admit that.
But they seem to be waiting for the 1 year that it goes down a bit or two, and then they're ready to go. Then the time is there.
Well,
anyway.
And they still won't be ready.
No.
Yeah, that's it. So look, it's about mindset and perspective, how you choose to see things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jared, how can people get in touch with you? You can leave your number and email here now, and they can write it down, and as well, it'll be in the show notes. So how can people get in touch with you?
Okay, so you want me to tell you my cell phone number right now so everyone can call me?
Why not? Yeah.
So it's 514-589-8355. I'm always interested in talking with prospective investors and current investors to see what's going on. And my email is at jjhenderson, that's HENDERSON 555 @gmail.com. And so I'm always looking to network with more like-minded investors or people thinking about getting into the game and haven't taken the first step. Please get in touch with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Sandy, how can people get in touch with you?
289-389-6846. That would be the best way. And you?
Info at breakthroughreipodcast.ca. Or, you could call me 289-927-0464. A lot of numbers there to remember. Just and you know what? I got in crap with my coach because I don't talk about what I'm doing enough. So one of our very best markets that we're in right now is Peterborough, and I'm up there all the time. I just think there's a tremendous opportunity there for people that are looking for cash flow and appreciation. There is 2 post-secondary schools up there. A lot of people are buying the exact same property that you would to add a second suite here in Durham, maybe just having that as a backup plan like Jared was talking about, and then moving and then starting off with a less capital heavy investment. And that is like just adding the 6 bedrooms, maybe even 7 bedrooms to a single family home and renting them to students at $600 and $650, per room. So the numbers there make a lot of sense. We're looking at prices that are a little bit higher, like Jared said, than they were a while ago. But now, typically right in around the $400K mark is where you're getting a nice 3-bedroom, 3 plus 1 or 2 bedrooms, whatever, raised bungalow in a nice area close to the school. So, the numbers still look fantastic. And if anyone's interested in that kind of investment, give me a call. I'm going to say my number.
Rob, I also heard the 407 is connecting with the 115 next year. Is that true, or is that a rumor?
Yeah, it'll be the end of the year or beginning of next year. I think they might have delayed a little bit, but yeah, I think that's going to add another aspect to it, right? It's very close now, and it just the East is getting closer.
That's going to tie it right into Toronto, right? Even more so. Especially
over the top end of Toronto, right? Newmarket and Aurora and Markham, those kind of things. Right. It's going to really make the accessibility much, much quicker. Yeah. Okay. Give me a call if anyone's interested in that. Sandy, what kind of stuff are you doing? We're going to talk about that a bit because we never do.
That's true. Okay. We'll spend a minute or two. I'll give a brief update before we shut it down here. But yeah, we've been doing lots of stuff in Hamilton for sure. Like I said, we got the property management company now. We actually just partnered with a contractor. We have our own construction company now. Which helps us. We're doing a lot of the BRR strategy. So we kind of looked at tying all those in and getting some more ownership around the key parts of it. Obviously, we can buy stuff as the realtors, or get some inside scoops on things. I guess as realtors, we can now do the construction. We can now do the management side of it. So just having a little more control over all that. So we've been focused on that and making sure we run those projects smoother and more efficiently. So yeah, we've just been doing a lot of that, and as well just doing that with partners and different sort of structures there. But buying a lot of properties, that's been our goal, and making sure that process is getting smoother.
But you know what? That's great. Yeah, thank you, Sandy. We got to talk about this stuff more. But anyway, let's get back to Jared real quick before we let him go. I just want to say, that if anyone's sort of wanted to, I don't want to say dip their toe in the water, but let's just call it, if someone's new to investing and they want to mitigate some of the risk that can be involved with it and partnering with somebody that's already doing it, doing what you want to do, if that's something you're interested in, then definitely give Jared a call. Again, his number is 514-589-8355. And all that's in the show notes again. Thanks, Jared. I think we got a lot of good info out of you. I really like those tips that you had.
Yeah.
And thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun, and happy investing.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks.
See you next time, guys.
Yeah.